get it started now. Freedom, 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 freedom. My freedom begins at Life Force Canada.
Welcome to Life Force Canada. I am Karen Klassen, and together we rise. Let's all just take a deep breath in that life force energy and exhaling any frustration or stress. The chat's open, so please say hello. Let us know where you're from. Welcome to all the new people here. And feel free to post your questions in the chat. Sometimes I don't see the questions, but we have brilliant members here that can definitely answer your questions if I'm not able to see it. If you have yet to sign up to our lifeforcecanada.ca website, I recommend you do, as you'll receive all of our updates and be connected to our tribe across Canada. As everyone knows, Life Force Canada, we are on a journey to ending human slavery and creating a new social structure, a parallel reality. We're not here to take over the government. That system is corrupt. We're here to co-create a self-governing structure where all of our provinces stand on their own, yet we're all united. We need you to recognize your power, the power that you have to create a prosperous and free future in your town and in your intentional community. I know that fascism is when government takes over corporations. Now we have corporations controlling government, like BlackRock and Vanguard. They are unelected officials, not only controlling government, but of course, as you know, they are controlling judges and media, presidents, prime ministers, mayors, city council members, generals, premiers, right? All politicians. And they are only here to serve the elite and their agenda. They have mastered that psychological operations indoctrination program in our schools, grooming us to believe in the false narrative, believing that someone out there is going to save us, that politician, which they have really controlled for hundreds of years. Now, to be truly free, we need to know the facts. We need to know the truth so that we can fix the problem. We all know that Canada is a corporation owned by the Crown, that's owned by the Vatican. We know that we've been slaves, subject to the Queen and the mayors and the city councils, etc. We need to know our unalienable rights. And as long as we maintain their system, we will be harmed. We need to have a status correction. That is the remedy. And this is why I've asked Adam Beck here to join us this evening. Adam is a truth seeker. He has an incredible YouTube channel called Reclaim Your Securities. That's how I found him. And he's been providing Canadians with very important information. He's been on the path since 2000 and full-time since January 2001. And the journey of seeking answers began with an audio by Ed Griffin, the author of Creature from Jekyll Island. He spent a lot of time seeking answers from legislation, court cases, the Bible, legal and English dictionaries. It took him until 2014 to conclude freedom will not, hence the word not, be obtained through legislation or any form of human law. Please welcome Adam.
Hey, everybody.
Now, Adam, can you let us know a bit about yourself and how you uncovered the fraud that is upon us and what really ignited your passion for what you're doing now?
It goes back to, again, the Creature from Jekyll Island. It was, I started studying actually David Wynne Miller. I started with him about September 2000. And then that evolved over to Roger Ulvik and Eldon Werman, Fred Kybers, a whole bunch of other people at the time. Got to meet the Registrar General for Ontario, Deputy Registrar General in 2004 with a couple of friends, and she explained to us what a birth certificate is and what it isn't. But when I started to ask questions that were outside of her authority, then her lawyer would pipe up and basically tell us she cannot answer the question. They weren't jerking us around. But that was one of the lessons that all of these people that work for government that are bound by legislation. So they get the authority from legislation. That's the limitation. They can't go outside of that box. And just along the way and realizing that I guess all my life I kind of knew something wasn't right, and I felt like, oh, he's looking over my shoulder, somebody's watching, something's watching. And sure enough, and when I heard the creature from Jacqueline, and well, that was basically confirmation that things are not as we maybe think they are. And for myself, I was just I couldn't participate in the lie anymore, so I just stopped doing things that I was excuse me, perpetuating the lie in my own world. And granted, I would do things a little bit differently than I had, but live and learn. But it's all good. And I probably, if I changed something in the past, I maybe wouldn't be here today. So it's all good. Mine is the truth is a motivating factor here, not partaking in a lie. And I can't fathom how some people are aware of the lie, but they still want to partake in it. But I get it. They got jobs, they got families, children to feed. So it's a tough road for people, or can be. I should say here too, just for my own sake, I guess, is, whatever I say here tonight, strictly for educational purposes, not legal or other advice. I recommend that no one acts on anything that I might say here tonight. You can get yourself into deep doo-doo. If you do, due to a lack of understanding, and it takes time to renew the mind, which is really what I'm going to talk about anyhow, is heavy duty on renewing the mind. And I learn best too from people where people are at when people start asking questions. So it's one thing for me to talk, but it's good when people start asking or ask questions, because then that mirrors back to me. So I get an idea where people are at, where their understanding is. So for me, that's quite important. And that's that.
Thank you, Adam. I agree with you in regards to being aware of the system. Many years ago, I woke up and I knew that I was not to be a part of the system in regards to voting. So I never voted, ever.
Me neither, actually.
Right? Yeah,
No,
because
never.
I knew that it was all rigged. It's all theater, just an act. And we didn't have democracy. I know that many of us are familiar with the fraud that is our government. However, for those who are just waking up or, beginning down this rabbit hole, how did the government acquire this control? I do have many questions for you, and I know that our listeners are going to have questions for you as well. But how did the government acquire control of and over our divine inheritance, our estate, our lives, our body, our children?
It's actually a very good question. We gave it to them basically, and I like to say it. I don't call it so much of a fraud. And the reason I say that is, and I'm coming from the biblical perspective here. The first 5 books of the Bible is the law for God's creation, being men and women. And I don't know if people are aware of that, but every cause of action, for example, that could arise between men has already been decided by God. And all we need down here is human judges to administer the laws of God and administer the judgments of God, rather than what they're doing now, administering the legislation of the province and the federal government. But what we did, it's called an atonement. And if people aren't aware, 1 Samuel 8:10-17 in the Bible lays it out exactly what everyone's involved in today. And that's basically where we rejected God. And the other thing here to keep in mind is, I don't know where people are at with the God thing, but it's God, creator, maker. But everything comes from something else. Dogs come from dogs, cats come from cats, men and women come from men and women, children come from men and women, moms and dads. And of course, we all came from God. And that's when God says, made in his image. When you look in the mirror, you're actually seeing the face of God. He made it. He owns it. And it is actually a rule of law. Whoever made it owns it, rules over it. So 1 Samuel 8:10-17 is laying out, this is a point in time when people petitioned God for, they wanted somebody else to be their king. And so God told them what kind of king they're going to have. And that is exactly the king we have. And interestingly enough, with respect to specifically 1 Samuel 8:10-17 in the Bible, King James, when they were doing the King James Bible, they were well aware of 1 Samuel 8:10-17. And here's what he says. Here's what they said. He says, well, God says this is the kind of king that the people will have if they reject him. Well, I'm going to be that king. And basically it ends with you'll be his servant. And so it's called an interment. So we turned our backs on God and turned over to choose a new king, and that new king is Canada or Her Majesty the Queen of the United States of America, wherever your allegiance is at, other than God. It's that simple. So that's called an interment. If people aren't familiar with that term, you can look it up there. But it's choosing another Lord. It's what it's choosing. And so now understand, like when they talk on planet Earth here about landlord.
Oh my gosh,
It's a
yeah.
different Lord. You see, it's a different Lord, and you're bound to that Lord instead of our maker, owner, ruler. So when we turned anyhow, so we did the interment thing, and so now people are claiming to be Canadians, and you produce a driver's license, a birth certificate, a social insurance card. All of these things identify you unknowingly to you and I as a Canadian. So that's because if you're to take, for example, 20 people and line them up on a wall, and then try to pick out which ones are the Canadians, you cannot possibly do it by looking at people. This is the fiction of the whole thing. And this is the meat of the matter, is the fiction aspect. So the people that turned chose another king, and you hear people on the internet all the time about talking about their leaders, like they're talking about Justin Trudeau, their leader. Well, if that's your leader, then you better do what your leader says. And it was through the interment, we rejected God as our maker, owner, ruler, and chose the country wherever people are at. Canada, United States, Australia. No, that's our maker, owner, ruler. And that's why, as a Canadian, you do not own any property as a Canadian. But a Canadian actually doesn't exist, except in the mind. So the real root cause here is, pardon me, to get back to the Bible and the first 5 books of the Bible, our fathers had a duty to teach us the law. And had our fathers done that, then we wouldn't be in the pickle we're in. Problem is, my dad never taught me the law. His dad never taught him the law. My great-great-grandfather never taught my grandfather the law. And so somewhere along the way, fathers stopped teaching their children the law. And even biblically speaking, they used to get the people together every 7 years, the congregation. That's what they called the congregation, to get all the people together every 7 years, and they would read them the law. I'm talking about the laws of God here now, not the laws of men. There's no statutes, legislation, none of that mumbo jumbo applied in this case. So that was to keep it on the people so they wouldn't forget. And so the actual duty, it's the duty of our dads to teach us the law. And because our dads didn't teach us the law is one reason you could say that we have turned. That's why I say that's not so much of a fraud, but a lack of knowledge on our part of the law. And God's law is the law. Everything else is just an act. And they tell you that it's an act.
Right.
Whole thing is an act. It requires actors and masks and so on and so forth. But that's how we have turned. Or pardon me, that's how we gave up our birthright. And again, if you read 1 Samuel 8:10-17 in the Old Testament, it's all there. And keeping in mind too, when they're talking 2,000 years ago, whatever, when they talk about taking somebody's donkey, they're talking about property. It's all about property. So no matter what they're talking about, it's property. If they're talking about your children and make slaves out of them, they're talking about property. If they're talking about turning them into cooks or soldiers, they're talking about property. It's all about property. Follow the property.
Amazing.
And, that's how they got control over us. And then from that day forward, we've been appearing in person ever since. And that is the crux of the problem, the person part.
I think it's going to be a big truth pill to swallow when people begin to start wrapping their mind around all of this. I'm a spiritual person. I'm not a religious person. However, that said, I feel truth, and what you're saying feels like is truth. And I know that my dad's Christian, and I know that God, creator, has been forgotten in the hearts of many men and women on this planet. And I was listening to a woman, her name is Kelly Spell, and she is talking about the triple crown of Baal and how Lucifer has taken over this realm. And so many people have no idea that we've been living in hell, and it's our time now to take our power back and remember God's law. So you're right. The biggest enemy is ignorance, defined as lack of knowledge. And we all need to really take the time to research this topic and awaken to our true power and the connection to the divine. And I know that we are all sovereign in our heart, yet the system that we're in, we're straw men, we know this. What steps do we need to take to reclaim our sovereignty so that we can exit this corrupt system?
Well, that too is a little bit of a misnomer, because God is actually the sovereign, and we are not actually sovereigns. We don't have sovereignty, but what we do have, if we're doing the will of God, then we represent God. In that case, we represent the sovereign. Just like ministers here in Canada, you got your ministers of transportation, ministers of health in the provinces, not the federal level. Well, they all represent the Queen. They're not the Queen, but they represent the Queen. So whatever power and authority the Queen has as her representatives, they all have the same thing as her, only when they're doing the will of the Queen. In other words, when they're carrying out their authority based on a legislation passed by the Queen in the name of the Queen. So the ministers themselves are not sovereign, but they represent the sovereign. And the same thing here with God. God is the sovereign, because there's only, sovereign is the maker of the law, and God is above the law. God's not subject to his laws. He's the maker of the law. Like God's not subject to the law of gravity. We are. So that tells you right there that, and that's just a proper understanding of the word sovereign. So as long as we're doing the will of God, we represent the sovereign. If we're not doing the will of God, then we have no sovereignty whatsoever, because then we've rejected God, and we've done that atonement thing. And so it's important for people to understand that we're not actually sovereigns. God is a sovereign, and we represent God, the sovereign, provided we adhere to his will. And one of that is very important for people here, is he says 140 times in the Bible, keep my commandments. 147 times actually, keep my commandments, keep my commandments, keep my commandments. How do we keep those commandments? We would not be in this pickle jar we're in today. Again, our fathers didn't teach us the law. So basically, as representatives of God, if we're doing his will, we have his power of attorney. What's called God's power of attorney. And that's basically what Jesus had when he was here. Jesus is not God. It's as long as we're representing God like Jesus was, that we have God's power of attorney. But as soon as we're not representing God, like we're representing our own self-interest, blah, 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 then we're not doing the will of God. We don't have God's power of attorney. We're not representing the sovereign. So it's just a slight bit of a misnomer there. But that is the crux of the matter. And trust me, 2014, I read the Bible a lot. I think I read it twice in a number of months, and I made a lot of notes. I think I got 197 pages of notes, because I was making sure to connect certain dots. And but it comes down to God is the maker, the owner, and the ruler. If we're representing God, then we have God's sovereignty in that we represent God, just like the ministers in the government here. They represent the sovereign as long as they're doing what they're doing in accordance with the authority extended them through legislation. If they violate that, then they're outside that box, and they could be sued, charged, or fired, whatever. So anyhow, in their counterfeit world, the Queen is their sovereign, right? They always refer to the Queen as the sovereign. So she's the sovereign. The ministers that represent her are not sovereigns. They represent the sovereign. It's the same over here. And they're just, it's a counterfeit of God's kingdom. So they're doing the same thing that God set it up. He's the boss. He's the big cheese. He's the maker, owner, ruler. He made all of this stuff. It says in the Bible, I think about 80 times. It's all his. He owns everything. So that means he owns everything. Just accept it. We didn't make it. Nobody here on planet Earth made man. Nobody here on planet Earth made planet Earth. And I read the I Am teachings. One of the things they harp on tremendously is this. These are big statements for me. Selfishness is the root of all evil. And it's unfortunate that the children of God have claimed ownership of the wonderful blessings of God, because that's just where the give and take and you got more than I got kind of nonsense comes in, and it just creates a whole poop show, bottom line. So the ministers that are representing the Queen, they are actually representing their sovereign. That's where their allegiance is to, right? Same when people vote, that's where your allegiance is going. All power is vested in the Queen, who then lends it to the government of the day. So, I just wanted to clarify that a little bit on the
Yes.
on the sovereign aspect.
Thank you for that.
Again, this is all for your own, everybody's discernment.
We appreciate you being here. And I remember Mark Christopher, he was talking about power of attorney, how we have given over our power of attorney. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
Totally. That's what we did through the vote.
Yes.
If you guys talked about that, they understand what's actually transpiring there.
If you can share, we'd love your perspective.
Well, sure. When you vote, then you know your MP or your MPP will refer to you as one of his constituents, which means his principal. And at first, that looks really good. Well, I'm the boss. I'm the principal. He's my agent. But when you vote, you've given him your power now to go into Parliament or the legislature in your name and all the voters' names, everybody's name. He goes in there, and when they pass laws, they're passing those laws in your name, and then they're going to turn around and oppose those very same laws on you because you authorized it through your power of attorney. That's the madness of this game. And it really is that simple.
And we know the power of words, and you mentioned Canadians, and we know that the English language is a spell that's been casted. What words do you think we need to start letting go of now so that we can
Person. Yep. Earlier, I talked about the attorney thing, but the fact of the matter is, whether you have a birth certificate or not, or a driver's license or not, or any government form of identification, what at all, if you had none of that, you're still going to be in trouble. They are still going to deem you to be a person, regardless of whether you have those items. And the other thing people should be aware of is identity is not what you are, it's what you're of. You look in the mirror, you see the face of God, that's of God, no doubt about it. But you show a driver's license to a cop, or you show a driver's license to a judge, no, they don't ask for identification in court, there's another reason for that, but, or to the banker, they're going to see you as that's going to identify that you are of Canada. That means belonging to Canada. Property belonging to Canada. So who owns what here now? You see, this is why you don't own any property in Canada. When Canada owns you, and there's court cases have documented this. The attorney general in Texas, their parents were complaining about rights to do something with their children. This is a number of years ago, and he just stood up there and said, you don't own your children, you don't own yourselves. Not as Americans, as men and women, yeah, but as Americans or Canadians, no, not at all. And that's where people have crossed the threshold from, in God's kingdom, where God says, if you do my will, the yoke is light. Whereas over here, the burden is very heavy, and that's what everyone's under. But it's the term is person. All their acts, rules, regulations, criminal code, all of it applies to persons. God made man and God made women. Parliament created person. The legislatures created person. So they put, every person's required to do this, and no person shall do this. It's in the legislation. They define what a person is. If you've partaken in that act, for example, if you applied for a driver's license, well, then you're acting out in the Highway Traffic Act now. You're a person bound by the Highway Traffic Act. You have to follow the script, which says, here's what's going to happen if you do certain things that you shouldn't be doing, or shall do this, shall have a driver's license, shall present a driver's license, shall have automotive insurance, proof of insurance, contract of insurance, shall renew the sticker, all this sort of stuff, whatever's in there. So, and that's why I say at the end of the day, whether you're Canadian or American or not, it's all person. The key term here is person, and a person is a fictional being, and that's from a high court justice. We're not making this up.
Right.
And I should also say here that there's no easy road, like you touched on earlier, Karen. This is definitely Lucifer's world, and where bad is good and good is bad.
Yes.
And in this realm, you have to have evidence, and it cannot be self-serving evidence. It can't be like, oh, I heard from the internet that a person is a fictional being. No. You want to walk in there and be able to say, here's from a high court justice saying a person is a fictional being. And if people aren't aware what a fictional being is, we'll look up the word fictional. It's imaginary. Simplest way to put that is, I like to use the Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry thing. Clint Eastwood is the man who played the part of Dirty Harry, but there really is no Dirty Harry, is there? It's just you see Clint Eastwood, but it's Dirty Harry when he's playing the part in the movie because he's following the script, and that's his name. It's Dirty Harry in the movie, but there is no Dirty Harry.
Right.
And take that a little bit further. People are learning now too, and they get a phone call from Canada Revenue Agency, for example. They phone them back to say, yes, I'd like to speak to the Canada Revenue Agency, please. I got a message from the Canada Revenue Agency. Well, in a few minutes, they will admit that there is no such thing as a Canada Revenue Agency. Then you say, oh, this is a bunch of kids playing games, and hang up, and they'll never bug you again. Because you just disclosed the deception. And this is the thing for people, we've been born into this, that there's a lot of things that are not real, that have no power whatsoever, but we believe them to be real. And every one of them is a person. Because in God's kingdom, all men are created equal, so no man has authority over another man. But in this satanic system, there's a hierarchy, like you said, presidents, vice presidents, generals, right down to the mailroom guy. There's all kinds of different levels of hierarchy. In the military, you got your privates, you got your colonels, you got your sergeants, you got your generals, admirals, stuff like that. So in that world, it's a little bit different. But the key term here is the term person. Is the crux that's got everyone now. I just want to read something here from, I thought I'd pull it up before we go. They will deem you to be a person. And here's what the courts, these are Canadian courts now, say about the word deem. When you talk of a thing being deemed to be something, you do not mean to say that it is that which it is deemed to be. It is rather an admission that it is not what it is deemed to be, and that notwithstanding it is not that particular thing. Nevertheless, it is to be deemed to be that thing. So what I'm saying here is they are going to deem you to be a person, like it or not.
Right, right.
And they will even admit that to you. If you get in the court system, for example, and you're talking to the judge, he'll say, well, we deem you to be a person. And you can say, well, that's actually golden opportunity, because now you can start saying, no, that's witchcraft, that's fraud, that's a deception. But more importantly, I have another quote I want to read here, and this is from a Harvard Law Review from 1893, from written by Mr. Best. And because there's, with respect to this being deemed, it just said there that they're going to deem you to be a person, and there's no way around it. Well, there actually is, and there's one way around it, one and one only. Mr. Best, in his books Upon Evidence and Upon Presumptions, defines a fiction as a rule of law which assumes as true and will not allow to be disproved something which is false, but not impossible.
Yes. Wow.
So they won't let you be undeemed to be a person unless it's impossible that you're a person.
Right, right.
That's the saving grace. And I'm saying this because I know people, there's a lot of things people want to do. But if you really need to, in my estimation, have a really good grip on this person thing, because every time somebody from the government approaches you, they're actually approaching a person. They're waiting for you to say or do something that you're confirming that you are that person they're looking to serve or to whatever. And a friend of mine in Florida recently, just to give an example, was approached with the sheriff there to serve the foreclosure papers. The short version is he went back to his cruiser to call his supervisor and came back and apologized. And all she took the stand on, and a person is a fictional being, and she's got that from a high court justice. And also that she was the one, she was the one, she identified herself as one with an interest in the estate, and the estate is represented by your statement of live birth that represents your estate. But I don't want to get into that here too much, because that gets a little complicated. The bottom line is, and the easiest thing to deal with for most people is the aspect of the person.
Right.
You won't find any legislation in any country on the planet, to my knowledge, certainly not in Canada or any province here in the United States or Australia, England, the UK, or Scotland. Not one of them mentions the word man or women. It's all persons, every single solitary one of them. So when you can overcome the being deemed a person, you are free now. That's the bottom line. When they can no longer deem you to be a person,
right,
you're out. You're out.
The word person means vessel and open to inland piracy. That's what David Stray talks about.
Well, sure, but you look in the Highway Traffic Act, you look for the definition of person there, you look in the income tax code for the definition of person there. Just know that everything they're doing, and you have to be aware of these things. If somebody, government or bank, I don't care where it's coming from, is making a claim involving you, it's actually directed at a person.
Right.
So whatever that claim might be, when they can no longer stick that person to you, then someone else is liable for that person, as it should be. You see, all that's happening here is they passed off the buck on us for the person they created.
Oh my gosh.
So we have a court case from 1973. Colgate Palmolive was a anti-combines case, and then the court says flat out, If the parliament created it, it can control and regulate it. So when you look into legislation and in the Highway Traffic Act, for example, it defines a person as whatever it defines it as. Well, that person there was created by the legislature right then and there. In other words, there's no such thing as a driver until they created a person that's a driver, right?
Right, right.
So,
The same would apply to Canadian citizen then, right?
Yep.
We need to delete Canadian citizen.
Well, totally. And, people are always, talking about they want to claim their charter rights, rights under the charter rights and freedoms. Well, then to do that, you got to be a Canadian, which means you're a person, which means they've got jurisdiction, which means the judge is your father.
Right.
Either God is your father or the judge, the father, and people are not aware of this, under parents patrie jurisdiction, the judges are the fathers of the country. And think about it. Whenever there's a dispute amongst the family members, the citizens, where do you go for settlement? To the judge, the father. When there's argument in your house, where do you go? Daddy.
Isn't that incredible?
And like I say, the rule, and there's another rule of law that all law is based on a father-son relationship. Pronounce that, but if you pay attention, just like whoever made it owns it, rules over it. They don't write that down, but if you pay attention, that's exactly right. Like if you can prove that you created the patent, then you're the maker, owner, ruler, right? You make the laws with respect to it.
Right, right.
So that is the crux in this person thing. It's all fiction. It's fiction. It's all fiction. But they're going to deem me to be that fictional being, but it's impossible. So here it comes down to this. Once you've got it across that the person's a fictional being. Now, do I look like a fictional being? We're gonna have to say no. Otherwise, he's got to go to an insane asylum because they're delusional at that point. And it's not possible that a man can be this and that. That's not possible. That they can't get around that.
Same as the word attorney, right? Attorney is actor on stage, and it means to steal from one to give to another. So they're the gatekeeper, right?
To a turn, exactly.
Yeah.
From this lord, his client, to the queen.
They're all in on it. Yeah.
You betcha. And it's totally satanic, I guess is the best word.
Yeah, it is. I'm so glad to hear, though, there's many lawyers that are actually waking up and tearing up their bar cards in the US. David Strait's talking about this, and it needs to happen in Canada.
Yeah, well, this is the thing about the person. Everyone can do this. That's why I'm harping on the person thing here in this call anyhow, is the more people catch on to this, and the fewer people will be voting. Fewer people will be claiming to be Canadians. I'm not suggesting people throw their identification away. You don't have to throw it away. All you got to do is prove that you're not that person. That's easy. So you can keep your driver's license, keep the social insurance card. So if you actually get rid of those things, then that's where you're going to get yourselves into deeper doo-doo.
Oh, that's great to know, Adam. Can you repeat that so we can keep our driver's license?
Yeah, you just operate your life exactly as you have before, except now you're not deceived. Now you know a person's a fictional being, right?
Right.
So you let people think what they're going to think. You go about your business. You don't say anything about this, but if somebody comes knocking on your door and wants something from you, the woman, that's the time that you would now bring forth the person's a fictional being and have a little conversation like Monica did with the sheriff.
Right.
And it was all verbal. Her conversation was completely verbal. She didn't give him any paperwork. She didn't have to go get the proof that a person's a fictional being. They kind of know behind the scenes already, but you got to have that evidence. That's how they work with evidence. And it's like I say too, so the judges are the fathers of the country. So when father of the country agrees that you're not a person, the rest of the children, all those other Canadians, the crown attorneys, the prosecutors, the lawyers, the bankers, none of them could touch after that. But now you're the woman or the man operating their person, free of the mumbo jumbo.
Right. Thank you for all you're doing. Another question I have is, many of our members want to buy land and create an intentional community while others already have land, property. So what do you recommend they do first and foremost to make sure that their land is protected?
Well, first off, they got to know that they don't own the land now. So buying land right now, you don't own it. And the obvious evidence is that if you don't pay it doesn't matter what the value of the property is. If you don't pay the property taxes, they will take it. That's the owner in Canada. And that's happening because people think they're somewhere along the way have identified themselves as a Canadian, which is at the end of the day as a person, and they have jurisdiction over persons. And that's the sons of the country. It's in the national anthem, and all our sons command. So it's not your land. You don't own any property and people, pardon me, in Canada. And this is a big one people must comprehend: to be free of all the legislation and all the legalized theft, so that when you purchase land, what you have to do, they can't take it from you. And I want to give you an example here. A friend of mine, Fred, he approached the local municipality here over Madoc about 4 months ago. He walked in and he asked him, if I registered this dog, who owns the dog? They said, well, we do, or we will. He says, oh, good. Well, here's the bill for the dog, what it cost you for the dog. Here's what the dog eats. Here's when he eats. This is vet, and make sure you look after your dog that I have custody of. That's only to initiate a conversation, because at the end of the day, they're either going to come over and look after the dog at their expense,
Right.
that you get to enjoy, or they're going to say, no, we don't want to own it anymore. In other words, they're giving up claim to the dog. Nobody will be coming to your house and saying, you know, you don't have a license for the dog, you don't have a permit for the dog, where's the tag on the dog's collar? Totally a jurisdictional thing. And so again, it's back to the person. So even the property you have now, so whether you've got the property now, you want to purchase property in the future, it's going to be a person they're going to perceive that you're a person purchasing that property.
Right.
And as a Canadian, again, you don't own the property, and you will have to pay the property taxes. So this is a time when you want to bring forth, no. You guys all know a person's a fictional being, right? We're not playing any of that nonsense here, because what you're doing at the same time is we are exposing that you're not a fictional being. Fictional beings don't exist. Well, neither are they. So now it's kind of man to man, woman to woman.
Right.
Because you're taking the fiction off the table when you expose a person as a fictional being. So it's like I say, the whole thing hinges on the person. So if you have property right now, and this is like Monica's situation, there was subject to foreclosure. That was due to a deaths in the family, some other stuff going on there. But, and, you know, there's a foreclosure. They came to foreclosure, which is, you know, is to take the property. Well, she dealt with that the person's a fictional being, blah, 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 blah. That she's one with the interest in the estate, which is actually the security for the whole thing, represented by the certificate of live birth or the statement of live birth. That is the security. It's underwriting their whole system, backed by you and me, our labor. Not the gold, not the silver.
Right.
It's us back. It's all futures, securities futures. So, you know, you deal with the person thing like Monica did, they walk away. So she's got full control over the land though, so they won't be getting more tax bills. Nobody can come, nobody in government can come on the property. They don't have jurisdiction anymore.
So it's as
So hold-
simple as that, just claiming.
It's that simple. It's like my friend says, he says, the answer is really simple. Getting there's the hard part.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm saying that because this is a case of renewing the mind. And I'm guessing to say that everyone here went through their education system. We've all watched TV. We've been interfacing with other people out there in the world. So all of our minds are thoroughly tainted, thoroughly tainted.
Yeah.
And it is a process to renew the mind, no doubt about it. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, when you overcome the being deemed a person, and it's easy to do once you get there, but it's the confidence. And the other big thing for people, the stumbling block, is the fear elements. Overcome. We have to overcome that fear aspect, because as long as we're in fear, there's no freedom there, true freedom either.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, running from these things. So it's the confidence, it's having the truth, having the knowledge, and like I say, the evidence. Like here's a high court justice right here says a person's a fictional being. You know what a fictional being is? It exists in the mind only. It's no flesh. It has no life. Biblically speaking, that's the graven image that God says in the second commandment, first commandment, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. That's just a graven image is like Dirty Harry.
Yes.
Clint Eastwood. God, remember, God breathed life into man. So men and women have life. We contain life. Fictional beings don't have life. That's the difference. They don't have life. It takes a man or a woman to animate it. And So from that viewpoint, so when they're talking in the Bible about graven images, it's people that have put on the dirty, hairy mask. And so at that point in time, legally speaking, there's no man or woman here, so you're presumed dead. The graven image has no life, and that is the dead. And in the Bible, where they talk about the dead, and they also talk about the resurrection of the dead, he's not talking about those that are 6 feet under in the cemetery. It's the people that have become persons. That's what he's talking about, the resurrection of them, us.
Yes, yes.
It's not a physical death, it's a legal death, legally speaking.
It's incredible how we are all being called to just deepen into this information. We've all heard this many, many times, but every time we hear it, it just deepens into our levels of awareness of the journey that we're on and how far we have to go in regards to releasing the fears of the mind. And my dad, as I said earlier, he makes many references in the Bible as well, and he always shares that we were given dominion over the land, and the land is really the Holy Grail. Kurt here, he asks, if you buy the land outright and get the deed, apparently no one can touch you. Is this true?
I'm going to say no, and I say that because Belleville is about 45 minutes away from here, and there's a big farm that had never been registered in Canada. So this guy had full ownership of the land, exclusive of government, anything. They took it.
Really?
Yep. It went through the courts. There's a big hoopla about it, but they took it. So he had the paperwork you're talking about, and at the end of the day, they claimed eminent domain, and they took it.
And so he didn't have the awareness of letting go of him being a person himself.
No, I would highly doubt it.
Yeah.
I never met the man. I just remember reading it in the local newspapers and kind of following along at the time.
Wow.
I found it interesting because I did a lot of studies on eminent domain and stuff like that, and what all that means, and water rights and different things, and shorelines and rights away, that sort of thing. But the other part of your question was in creating intentional communities. And this is the thing, like you saw that whole trucker thing there a few months back when they all went to Ottawa. And, the big problem was that they all went there as Canadians.
Yes.
They basically all went there as graven images as the dead. And of course, all that legislation and their leaders have authority jurisdiction over those Canadians. It's not the way to approach it. And
yes,
the thing that's on your website there, and I got to say this now, is, if people want to be free from this mumbo jumbo, you do not escape by fighting it, but by removing yourself from it. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. When you understand the person thing, and you're deemed to be a person, and you understand how to overcome that, the impossibility aspect. There's also a doctrine of necessity, which my buddy used to get CRA off his butt. But those two things there, and so you've separated yourself from the person. Now you have that's your freedom, because you're only in bondage because you're deemed to be a person. And everyone's going to say that. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone's tainted. Everyone's thinking the same thing. You listen to people. I listen to people talk. Person this, person that, person. I'm thinking, what the heck happened to the men and the women in the conversation? What about him? What about her? It's always person. It's like, that's how tainted our minds are.
Incredible, Adam. Again, in regards to land, David Strait, he lives in the US, and he stated that when we send our kids to school under their doctrine, that we are also gifting all agriculture land and rights over. So by not educating our children in their system, we gift our land rights back. Does this apply in Canada, or have you heard of this before?
No, I've never heard of that. I have heard that if you send your children to school, that you basically give authority over your children to the school, the trustees. That's why they call them school trustees. At least in Ontario, that's how they do it.
Yes.
Trustees of what? The property, the children.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the reasons why we've created it's Life Force Canada education portal, really to help parents and teachers exit the public school system. It's so important right now. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, and that's another dilemma for moms and dads, because in order to enroll the child in school, it starts with a birth certificate, right?
Yes, exactly.
So that's not to say, as long as a parent, mom and dad, have the knowledge what they're doing here, because I had a situation with my son, my youngest boy, when he was in school, They wanted him to get to have some kind of shots. This is like 20 years ago, more than that actually, 30 years ago. Some kind of shots in school, and he was just in grade 1 or 2. And I said, that's not happening. And they said, well, then he can't come to school. I says, oh, Jeff, you don't have to go to school anymore. Grabbed his hand and started walking out. And the principal runs up and says, there's another way. He says, well, you said if he doesn't get the shots, he can't come to school. But, oh, there's another way. See, they get paid for attendance
Yes.
and per person.
Right.
So the key here for moms and dads to understand is, okay, you can enroll your children in school with the birth certificate as required, but you make it clear right then and there, this boy is a boy. He's not a person. So for your accounting purposes and all your books and all sort of stuff, have at it. That's all. That's what this person really is. It's accounting in the background. It's all that counts. But to keep it simple, so to have at it, just don't ever presume he's a person. He's my son. I made him. I own him. I rule over him. Remember, who made it, owns it, rules over it. So everyone here has, if you don't believe in God, you have a mom and dad, right? They made you. So your mom and dad actually made you, own you, rule over you. This is why God says, love your mom and dad with all your heart. I missed the boat on that one. I was, I'm gonna do things my way. I understand now how I messed up. And that's all over the long haul for all of us causes a bit of a delusion of the family.
Right.
And the thing about the first 5 books of the Bible, if you look at that as the law of property for God's creation, that's exactly what it is. It's the law of property. And the reason God writes the law of property, because he created everything. It's his property.
Yes.
Again, whoever made it, owns it, rules over it. People are thinking here, yeah, but I made the canoe out of the tree. Well, whose tree was it? Did you make the tree? No, I challenge anybody here to make a tree. Oh, sure, you can pick some seeds and plant it in the ground, but you didn't. No, we didn't create any of that. And so whoever made it owns it, rules over it. And so this is where mom and dad start to stand up. And it's the same in court cases where provinces trying to take children from moms and dads. The judge is playing the part of the father. All the mom and dad got to do is walk in there together. Have a DNA test maybe, or photographs, anything to prove the connection that we're the mom and dad of that boy. We made that boy. We own that boy. We rule over that boy, not you, judgy wudgy. You approach it a little bit differently. You might want to get into, my friend does it. He gets into 4-letter language, which I don't know if it's appropriate to use it here or not, but he sets a judge. He said, here's the thing. And this is also from the I Am teachings. If you go into those courts, anybody in here that's been in those courts, after being there a few times, it's a dark place. Yes. It sucks the life out of you. You go in feeling good, you come out with a headache. That's why I stopped going to court. I said, this is nonsense. It's just a bad place. Very bad place.
We've got quite a few questions here. You're open to taking some
questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah, fair enough. I'm rambling on here.
No, this is great. I think everyone is enjoying the conversation. So thank you. DK, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, just well, my question is pretty much answered. I hope. It seems like this works in real life. Like before this call, I was thinking, well, is there some real life application to this? So it sounds like that there is, which I'm very thankful for, because all these years I have heard of stuff like this and David Strait and all caps and birth certificate. But to me, it just always seemed like very, very like a huge concept. And what I'm thankful for about tonight is that you made it simple. It's just undeem yourself.
Just person, one word.
Yeah.
You can wrap it, and it's good what you said, because you're right. All that other stuff everybody's been talking about, including myself, you can wrap it up into that one ball person.
Wow. Thanks.
That makes it simple.
Yeah.
So thanks. On.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. With that, I rest.
Thank you, DK. Jason.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, I understand the concept, and I do understand that, knowing it and getting and executing it is two different things. Yeah. But if we go under the fact that somebody's coming and we say we're a man or we're a woman or whatever the story is, and we live in their world, right? And we want to get on their plane with their passport and leave this country and use their ships and boats and stuff. How does that affect? So I know we talk about land, and maybe I can get them not to foreclose on my land, or I keep my land and not pay my taxes or whatever. but how do I participate in the world when other countries need this piece of paper to, like, say, for example, I want to go to Jamaica. Well, I need to get there somehow. Or that if we want to go through this, the flip side is we are where we are, and we're going to be happy with the area we live in, and that's our life, and we're not participating in their things going forward.
But
Or maybe, or I don't know if that makes sense or not, or
Oh,
if I
totally
it
makes
across.
sense. And it's really, that's why I was saying before, we don't give up any of this documentation like passport, driver's license, birth certificate, social insurance number. You keep all of that stuff. But you now know that you're not the person identified by that document.
Okay, but if I
So
don't pay my taxes,
So I didn't,
do the CRA thing.
I didn't say that. I didn't say any of that. I didn't say about, like I said, let's step back here. I didn't say any
Okay.
of that. That you can get to that point, but that's, like you said earlier, you definitely want to have the understanding of what you're doing before you take that on, because actually the fact of the matter is they owe us the other way around. See, the persons are the debtors. Look at it that way, and the men and women are the creditors. This system, it's whether you know it or not, your labor has been pledged to underwrite the public debt in the currency of Canada. In other countries, people in other countries, if there's people here from the States, for example, I don't know. So it's the persons are the debtors. It's the person that gets the bill, not the man or the woman, the person. And you're operating a person on behalf of the government. The only problem is we have allowed them to stick that. We have identified ourselves as that person.
Yes.
That's how the liability went one step further from the person into your pocket. Right, and you'll get the envelope shows up at your door. You owe this much, or whatever, a bill for the phone services, whatever the case may be. The men and women underwrite this system. I don't like to use the term creditors, but look at it. We are the creditors to the entire system. We underwrite all public debt. That's your phone bill. That's anything and everything that comes at you from the public. That's financial. That's everything, pretty much. That's public debt, and we underwrite the currency of the country. Your birth certificate is not a bond. It's evidence that the bond exists. And you started using that birth certificate was the moment you pledged your labor to underwrite the government bond that's underwriting X number of dollars worth of currency right now, and every taxpayer in the country. That's why you want to put these guys out of business. You withdraw from it. Now where are they going to get their, how are they going to pay their debts? Because your tax dollars does not go to infrastructure. It purely pays the interest to the bondholders. And I have that straight out of the answers from the Parliament of Canada in 1938 when they were interviewing Graham Towers, the first governor of the Bank of Canada, when it first opened up back then. Explained the whole thing very well, and even right down to the velocity of money. Now, I didn't understand it then, but I get it now, and this is why inflation's taken off. It's all picking up speed, man.
Okay, so one last question.
So hang on. So I didn't answer your question fully yet. So you just keep doing what you're doing. You don't change anything. You want to go to Jamaica, so you got a passport, you do that, and you go to Jamaica and you come back. So but you see, so that's what you do. Where the person thing comes in initially anyhow, is if somebody comes knocking on your door, everything's going fine and dandy, somebody comes knocking on your door, they want to foreclose. Well, that would be a good time now to talk about the person. Up until that point, you didn't really need to talk about it. So that's why I say you just keep doing what you're doing, but to go the next step further, men and women are the creditors, and that person you're operating and I don't care if it's all caps John Paul Smith, I don't care what it looks like, John Paul Smith, on the phone bill, the hydro bill, your tax bill, your paycheck, your bank account, health card, whatever. That's a person, and that person is the debtor, and that's what they bill. But you didn't create it. Remember, whoever made it owns it, rules over it. So when you start to get the distinction here, okay, so this is your person. You created it. God created me. I'm not the person. That's a fictional being. It's impossible for that to be me. So it looks like you guys are trying to pass off liability on me through your person here. That's not happening. And now they're stuck with the bill. And not only that, this is taking it further. And my friend is about 90% of the way there with the communication to Canada Revenue Agency. Those are, now that you understand, or when you get to understand fully and get it in your head that, okay, I'm actually underwriting this person that I'm using here, that's the government person. I'm the one underwriting this dang thing. Every time he gets the bill, I'm the one underwriting it. But I'm doing it for Her Majesty because it's her creation. So, Your Majesty, I got some expenses here. Here's the receipts you need to reimburse for the expenses. That's why I say they owe us. The reason it's going the other way right now that we're always paying them is because we're playing the part of the debtor person. Simple as that. It's gone one step further. We did that to ourselves. God says in the Bible, my people perish for lack of knowledge.
Mhm.
It sure is happening. Again, read Samuel 1:8, 10 to 17. Sorry, go ahead, sir. Jason?
My last part of that question is that, so we're tooling along. We do the man thing, and then at that point, does the government per se have a chance to say, okay, well, all those things that you've been using, the passports and everything else, are now gone because they're associated with that person, and you as a man or a woman don't have that. So we're good up until that point, but have you seen anything where they, God give us and the government's take us away type scenario?
No,
where you can't after that point?
No, that won't happen. They need us. Remember, we underwrite the public debt and we underwrite the currency of Canada. They need us. So it's not that they don't know we're here. It's not that they don't know, men and women don't exist in this fictional system. You can't put a man of, real reality into a fictional system. So like I say, you got God's kingdom of realities. You see the trees, the birds and the bees, and then in fiction land, it all exists in the mind. They sell you a lot of bill of goods and it sounds really good. It's all in the head. So when you get that distinction, first off, reality and fiction, and everything taking place in fiction it's nothing. And
okay,
but anyhow, so they created this person. They gave us all a person. Like I said, the problem is that we started to identify ourselves as if that person. This is like the judges will say, the applicant appeared in person. What he's saying is the man or woman appeared in person, so there was no men here today. And that's what everyone's doing. If we didn't jump the ship like that, like I say, then they would be stuck with the bill. It would never come to us. In other words, we would still be underwriting their person because you're using it, right? But you get reimbursement because we're not the debtor. The person is the debtor.
Okay, my last question is there, I'm assuming there is a link somewhere where there's some more research that we can look at, and I'm not going to say maybe there's not a step 1, step 2, step 3, or hey, this is what you have to understand first, this is what you have to understand second, this is what you should do that if A, B, C or happen, so that at least you're learning as you go along before somebody does come knocking, that you have some understanding of what's going on and you can make yourself more aware.
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel, Reclaim Your Securities. I'm not even sure how many videos are up there now, 40 or 50 of them.
I just put it in the chat.
Okay. And then there's a link there under the description area or show more part under the videos there. There's a link to our blog there. There's more information over there. But if you're interested, watch those videos. There's a playlist there called Tricks, Traps, and Deceptions. That's talking about all the person stuff and how we went from having our birthright, what happened that we lost our birthright and it turned over to the government, and what we can do to get it back. And it's just, people just need to understand some real simple concepts, really. And and let me just clarify here too. My thinking is, and I don't know, maybe this is maybe where you're at, Karen, is the more people that get on page with this person thing and understanding what the person thing, not worrying about where I'm traveling to or not the income tax thing, but just to take our power back from the government by not giving it to them anymore. That's a really good start for all of us. So I'm thinking about everybody here in that sense of, if everybody woke up tomorrow and realized a person's a fictional being and Trudeau goes on TV and start talking about Canadians this and Canadians that, we'd all be laughing because we know there's no such thing.
Yes, I agree 100%.
And they'd have no power.
And as you were expressing yourself, and great questions, Jason, thank you. As you're sharing the knowledge that you are bringing to the table here, it's integrating, like I'm integrating this information and I'm getting it on such a deeper level. Yeah, it's knowing that they lowered our status when it comes to law, but we are higher in status. And when you said that we are the creditors, we're not the debtors. And when we truly realize this, when we stand up and know who we truly are, that we don't need to pay for anything, that we are the beneficiaries, our reality is going to change in just that mind shift.
Totally. But that starts with freedom, true freedom. And, everybody's limited until that happens.
Yes.
And it's like I say, it's got to the point now, it used to be not that long ago, there were some couple cases here where the children's aid people went in to take children from Amish homes. Well, it came out that the children were never registered. So they returned the children back to the Amish people. They didn't have jurisdiction. Remember, I said if I register the dog, who owns the dog?
Yes, right.
We do. Well,
Right.
if I registered my child's birth, who owns the baby?
Exactly.
From their perspective, they will say we do, unless you say something differently at that moment in time by providing this information. I'm not abandoning my child to anybody.
This is where we need
example.
to correct the errors, right? We need to be the ones correcting, because they
Yeah.
never will.
No, they can't. It's like
No.
Humpty Dumpty couldn't fix Humpty Dumpty, right? And neither could all the king's men and all the king's horses, because they're all just fiction.
Exactly.
No doubt about it. We created this mess. There's only men at the end of the day. There's only men and women here.
Yes.
And so when you look at all the legislation, it's all persons, this criminal codes, person, this, a highway traffic act, all person. You go to, but it's only men and women here. Then you can see, okay, there's a distinguishment. None of that actually exists. Holy cow. That's a mind bender, because I thought it did.
Absolutely.
All these hoops we've been jumping through. So although I talk about people on staving off the sheriff on foreclosure and different things in court cases and stuff, my thinking, like when I came to join this call tonight, is if enough people catch on to this person thing from a just real simplistic perspective, and that's just okay. Every time I turn on the TV and I hear Justin Trudeau talk, and he does it every single solitary time, pay attention if you're not. Canadians. It's always Canadians. In the United States, Americans, the U.S. citizens, in Australia, it's Australia. God did not authorize any of that. He did not authorize man to create countries like this.
Again, Christina. Thank you, DK, for posting Adam's website.
Hi. So I've studied this for years and years and done what I can to learn about sovereignty by claiming it, like on the legal end of things. And nothing has actually worked where, even though I know it at a cellular level, I haven't been able to separate myself from the corporation of my name. And I actually go by two names, kind of like you do. So I'm using my soul name, my birth name, and my legal name that's on my documents. But how do I actually claim myself fully as sovereign with the government?
Oh yeah, see, that's a mistake everybody made. We don't claim anything.
Okay, so
we just hang on. You're the first. If I understand you correctly, like everybody else, when they talk about sovereignty, they think, okay, I'm king of my world, not over everybody else, not to hear harm anybody, but I'm king, master of my world, so to speak. And nobody from government interferes with that and trespasses on my property, so on and so forth. But you're never going to get it by claiming that you're a sovereign, because what authority above you is going to back that up? If you had 3,000 people, well, but okay, let me clarify something here. God does not exist in this system. Now let me, and you can challenge these guys at any time, but the Supreme Court of Canada has said God has no place in a democracy. So the Queen promised to uphold the laws of God when she became the Queen in her coronation oath. That's a lie. That's a deception. God didn't authorize any man or woman on this planet to rule over anybody. That's BS. Total BS. And they'll tell you, oh yeah, that's you go by the divine right. No, it's nonsense, because God said keep his commandments. And when you understand his commandments, we're not to bow to worship anybody but him. Period. The other one is the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, says Canada is founded upon the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. That's a lie. You just go into court there and ask the judge, did the laws of God have any bearing in this, any merit in this court at all? They'll tell you no. Oh, so this is where you can start to have fun with it. You can say, okay. So your Charter of Rights and Freedoms, where it says supremacy of God, and that's a lie. Then it's a deception. And when the Queen promised to uphold the laws of God, that's a deception. That's a lie. So when you guys are talking about court of justice, are you talking about court of deception or what? Because this is totally deception so far. You're a bunch of liars. This is how you got to start talking to these people if you're in that situation. I'm only saying that because you have to express no fear. So it's not about claiming sovereignty. Right. It's about pointing out that a person's a fictional being, and I'm not a fictional being. So that claim you got there cannot possibly have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
It's just a reverse way of looking at it, but the result is the same.
So how do you do that by writing something in to basically say I'm no longer a citizen on the ship?
No,
of Canada?
no, see, now you're still claiming everybody has said, stop that mode of thinking. Put it this way, if you want to say those things, you need to have the evidence to back it up.
Right.
Otherwise, it's self-serving testimony, and trust me, it'll go nowhere. Been there, done that. Yeah, I've been to
Well,
court probably 40 times in the last 22 years. I haven't been for quite a while now, but I learned a lot. And I've been
So what's the methodology?
so that, well, that, like I say, they're getting jurisdiction because they're deeming you to be a person. That's what it is. That's what's got everyone in bondage right
And
now.
the name and person in legalese terms means corporate entity,
No, it
correct?
means it's a fictional being.
A fictional being? Okay.
That's right. That's from a high court justice. That's from
Uh-huh.
one of their own. It's a high court justice. You guys are all in the legal world. Well, one of your own in the legal world, the high court justice says right here, a person's a fictional beings, but you guys all know that, right? If not, here's the evidence.
So the old $50 bill that Canada made said women are persons, right on the 50.
That's right. So you got to ask yourself, well, if women are persons, what happened to the women?
They were chattel and then they became persons?
Well, no, I'm very familiar with that $50 bill. Trust me. It says, okay, so that one day there's women, now women are persons. That's like
Yeah.
saying an apple is an orange. Like, that's not possible.
Well,
It's fiction.
that
It's
made
fiction.
them fictional, right? Okay.
It's a fiction. It's just like when they started authorizing assisted suicide, they didn't have the authority to do that. They had to create the legislation for that, right? To create the authority for it. So the same thing, in order for them to recognize women, they had to start saying they had to, like, you look up in the Interpretation Act for Canada, it talks about person. There's male persons and there's female persons. They always just use the term person, but if they're looking at you, they'll say you're a female person. They're looking at him, they'll say he's a male person, but it's still persons at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So there's a trust fund on each person that is traded on the stock exchange, correct?
No.
There isn't?
No.
With the registered number from the birth number?
No.
There's no registered number that is traded on
No.
the stock exchange?
Well, there's different things with securities going on behind the scenes, absolutely, and it's all based on the presumption of the abandonment of securities. But I really didn't want to get into that here tonight.
Okay, that's another
I mean,
night.
if you guys want to go there a bit, I'm okay to do that. But I really wanted to, like, in my mind, thinking,
Gotcha.
okay, the more people catch on to the person thing, and it's not about claiming I'm a sovereign and I'm of God, because that won't compute one iota. Trust me, or try it, you'll find out.
Mhm.
And the whole
Now,
thing
when
is they're presuming that they have jurisdiction over you because they are deeming you to be a person, and deem means you're not that, but they're going to do it anyhow. So if you really make that distinguishment, and it takes time, no doubt about it, but sit back and think about it after the call and watch those tricks, traps, and deceptions things, playlist in the YouTube channel there. There's only about 10 or 12 videos on that one, I think, and kind of lays it out pretty good there. And you see the actual straw people there that I use for props just to make the point.
Those are great. Those are
For,
great.
for distinguishment purposes, Marvin Sally there.
Thank you, Christina. Great questions.
Sadly, Sally passed away. She got vaccinated.
You're funny. Oh my gosh. Those are great characters. I love them. Judith, go ahead.
Hi there. So say I go and buy a car and then I decide to register it and I get insurance and I fill up the tank with gas, so I can keep all those receipts and then charge that back to who? The Corporation of Canada?
To the owner, yep.
Woohoo!
Not your business. No, you might, don't be jumping the gun here and thinking you know how to do that. But yeah, it's real simple. Like if I'm working for your company and I'm on the road doing sales and I have out-of-pocket expenses, if I want to get reimbursed, I got to show you the receipts, right?
Yes.
I come back, I show the receipts, you give it a report. Here's the mileage you did. What you give me the terms of the employment, and I'll just follow that for reimbursement. And as long as I do that, I get reimbursed. But see, people are so indoctrinated. We're thinking like debtors. We're thinking that we get from government. We thinking we need government benefits. Trust me. And then you get from government comes at a price. Like my dad used to say, he said, I'd rather deal with the mob because at least I know what I'm dealing with. And they don't hide it. True story. And we're not mobsters, but
So
Thank you.
true.
it's everything is backwards. They've got us thinking, like I said, they've got us playing the part of the debtor, but it's their business we're operating, so it's them that should be paying the bills. And it's, if we have out of pocket for expenses, then absolutely it's reimbursement, and that would be dealt with through the tax department, of course.
Oh, the Revenue Canada. But you said that wasn't a real thing.
Oh, not for you and me, but it's for their person. It is.
Okay.
it's like I say, there's two worlds going on here simultaneously. There's the real world and then there's the fictional world. That the fictional world actually doesn't exist, but it doesn't. And I know it's kind of a brain mess there, but it's fiction. It has no life. It's all persons.
But it's the corporation, so it is business. So as long as I recognize that I'm the person, my person is a corporation, then I just
Fictional being. You can
then-
prove it's a fictional being a lot easier than you got to prove it's a corporation. So that's why I'll keep coming back with fictional being.
But I was told that, like I was talking to the RCMP, and because they're a corporation as well, I was asking them if like a small community could hire the RCMP. And they said, absolutely not. It's basically the Corporation of Alberta and the Corporation of Canada have to make a deal between the two of them in order, like if we were to wanting law enforcement, do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so that's it, that a corporation deals with a corporation.
Well,
But
fiction, absolutely, fiction deals with fiction. Men and women are not
Oh.
in that system. You won't find men and women in that system anywhere. They do not recognize men and women in that system. They don't recognize God in that system. They don't recognize anything that's real in that system. Everything that they only recognize what they created.
right.
Simple as that. And it's all fiction. They didn't create the trees, no, the land, the water, the air, the fishies, the birdies, or any of that stuff. They didn't create you and I. They created a whole fictional counterfeit system that looks. When you look out, when people are talking, it's all the time you're thinking, talk about Canada and talking about the minister this and prime minister that. It's all fiction. The whole thing's fiction. It's only men and women here. That's the reality of it. That's the truth of it. And that's what I'm saying. As more people catch on to this and the person thing and start to dissolve that illusion out of their heads, and more people do that, and all of a sudden these government people have jurisdiction over nothing. They have jurisdiction over the dead fictional persons, but they can't attach it to you and I anymore. So it's just
Yeah.
reversing. It's reversing the roles. Actually, it's because what's happened is the master has become the servant, and the servant has become the master. And again, that's the atonement thing. You applied for a driver's license. We applied for a driver's license. I know we all did it, and I couldn't wait to get my license either. But we all did that. When we did that, we said, "You're my king." Right then and there.
True. So true, Adam.
And to make a point, I have a friend here. He's he's probably about 60 now. I haven't seen him for a number of years, but 15 years ago, he got pulled over by the OPP here in town, and they charged him with driving without a license. Well, it turns out he actually never applied for a driver's license ever. So he wrote a letter to the Attorney General of Ontario and the provincial prosecutor down here in Cobourg, and that I don't have a contract with you guys. And he showed up in court. And he said they come over and pat him on the back. Said, "Don't worry, Ken. We will never bother you again. We will never bother you again. See, no contract, no evidence of atonement, no evidence that he bowed down and worshiped someone else as his God, as his king. No jurisdiction."
That's incredible. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted you to be on here today, is because this is what we're all about at Life First Canada. We are stepping out and unplugging from that matrix, unplugging from that whole corrupt theater system that is so not created in truth, and to step into creating our intentional communities and really stepping into our power as living man, living woman. So I'm really glad you're here sharing this. And thank you, Judith. I do believe that what you're talking about is there are many steps, and Adam is sharing that step one is we need to wrap our mind around the idea that we need to let go of being a person. And then we get through the steps. Eventually we get to that place of taking all of your receipts. And Adam does have many videos on his YouTube channel in regard to making sure that you keep your receipts. And that's another step that we can maybe have Adam come in and share in the near future. But Barbara, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is, we're all hooked up to the matrix. So how do we get unhooked and become just who we are, and not like, I have a car, I have an apartment, like how do I extricate myself and still have a car and apartment without getting in trouble? I don't understand that.
It's the whole person thing. They have jurisdiction over persons, and it's once you dissolve the person that dealt with that, however you deal with it. And again, it's not about. Everybody wants to do the same thing all the time. before you even start talking about those things like you're asking about, it takes time to renew the mind enough to start getting the concept of just a second what we talking about here. Persons are fictional beings. I really got to sit back and think about that until I get it clear in my head that there's the real world and this world of fiction. And when I dissolve that world of fiction in my mind, at least it has anything to do with me. Yeah, it's there, but it has nothing to do with me. I cannot interface. Men and women cannot interface with fiction, and fiction cannot interface with men and women. Where we cross the Rubicon, whatever is when we start to identify ourselves and appear in person. So you're appearing as Dirty Harry, and the script applies to Dirty Harry, but you're not actually Dirty Harry. You're just playing a part, right? And but people think it's them, and they start taking it personally, and that's another trap. The word personally, all these things, it's all legal mumbo jumbo. So the key here is to just have that basic understanding to start with, to get a foothold anyhow to grow from. It's the clarity on a person as a fictional being. It wasn't me that purchased the car. Yeah, it was the person from the legal perspective. The person purchased the car, not you. And it's their person. They created the person, and so but they want you to pay for the cars. And that's where you're going to go get a loan now to pay for their car. That's all fine and dandy, but if it's your car, then you need to reimburse me. But it starts with getting that clarity that they have jurisdiction over persons, period.
And as we do that, then we lessen our fear, because I think it's the fear that's driving so many people in regards to the belief that an outer authority is going to come and potentially put them in jail, etc. So I think that as we begin to dissolve the fears of the outer authority and claim the I am of a living man or woman, I think it's going to change our reality in a really big way. So thank you, Adam, for that. And thank you.
Again, if we think in terms of I represent God and God created all of this, who the heck can be against me and who the heck can stomp on me?
Exactly.
That can kind of build a lot of confidence right there. I got a lot of power behind me. Thanks, Father. Let's go. My lips are moving, but you're doing the talking, Dad.
The power is right here.
That's right.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, Adam, I just would like to know, you own an automobile, something to travel in?
I don't own anything.
You don't?
Nope. I have an interest in many things, but I don't own anything.
What do you travel in?
Automobile.
Is it registered?
Yep.
Okay.
License plate, insurance, all of that. Because if you don't have that, then it's going to be trouble for people, right? That's not how you go.
Well, I know, and this is stuff that I've dug into this stuff and many for a long time, and I've seen so many things that are not successful. Now this is different, and I'm just looking to learn. Can you sort of give us some of your successes, say with, I don't know if you're going to court, are you winning court cases with, I'd like to see success, but I've never seen anything be successful.
Well, I could sit here and give you a list of stuff, but here's how my mentor put it to me. He says, just because I'm a brain surgeon doesn't mean I'm successful at brain surgery doesn't make you successful at brain surgery unless you go and study to become a brain surgeon. So let me put it to this way. I don't go to court. I haven't gone to court for a long time. I learned how to play the game there. And I learned if I just put my signature, the word FOR in front of my signature, that puts an end to the matter. They don't register the conviction. They don't attempt to collect. That was step number one from there. And that's when I realized, well, just a second here. If the person they charged was, if the entity they charged was me, then me putting the word for in front of my signature would not allow that, wouldn't have had the effect that it did. So that was proof right then and there to me through my own experience. Aha, there's a distinction here. And I created that distinction in the court case. And that's what everybody has to do here. So whatever I did is really irrelevant, to be honest with you. But to go back to your beginning, you're like, God, in reality, God made the planet Earth. It's his dust. He owns everything. So I don't own any of that stuff. In the fiction land, government created that person and everything registered in that person. They own the person, so they own that as well. So I don't own that either.
Ah, yes, that makes sense.
Okay, so I don't own anything. That's why I say I don't own anything. But neither does the bank, but they have the bank doesn't own the house that you're living in, but they have an interest in it. And if you don't pay the bank, they're going to take that house from you, aren't they? So the key part here is to have an interest, not ownership, but an interest in something. And we all have an interest in that estate I talked about earlier that's represented by your statement of live birth.
Thank you, Brian.
If that-
And I know there's been people in the chat. Adam has been sharing with us. Step one is we need to stop referring to ourselves as a person. It's a fictional being. And that's how we step out of the whole entire matrix. It's really a shift in the mind and to really release our fear of the corporation, because we know that all corporations are service corporations. They're just like a McDonald's, but we in the mind have given them so much power. And it's because of those television shows and the movies where they showcase all the fear porn, as you mentioned earlier, Adam. So yeah, we just need to delete all the movies and the images that we have in our mind that says this is what they're going to do to you if you claim your true self. Do you have time for one more question, Adam?
Thank you for calling on me. I really appreciate that, Karen. All this stuff takes energy, and I have to apologize because I didn't hear the first half hour of your presentation. I had to step away, but I need to sort of report back to my group with a little bit of a Cole's Notes version of what the takeaway is here. Is there something you can direct me to where I can sort of get sort of a low energy digestion for a bit of a walking plan? Because everything that you're talking about is relevant and it's really good, but the trials and tribulations, I'm fearful that a lot of this stuff, we can be right and wrong at the same time, right? So
Totally. Look, I've had like I said, I've been in court probably at least 40 times, and
that's not where we want to go, obviously.
No, but I mean, over the last 22 years, that was all part of a learning curve, right? Like my friend says, the answer is easy, but getting there is the journey, and very true. And so, and this is what I'm saying. I didn't come here to preach to anybody or tell anybody like it is. Look at it this way: I provided some information. If you watch on our YouTube channel, Reclaim Your Securities, there's a playlist there, Tricks, Traps, and Deceptions. I go through it all there. I provide some evidence. Jeannie Gecker, the person's a fictional being, so people can see that for themselves. And it's not me saying it; it's them saying it. It's not me that said, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." God said that, so I'm just providing information. People could look at that and say, "Okay, I'm a man, I'm a woman, whatever it is. I'm not a person." You can't be both. It's not possible to be both, and one or the other. And if you don't speak up or we don't speak up, and it's not about, like I say, about claiming that I'm a sovereign or I'm a man or God made me or any of that stuff. Trust me, it won't compute. Been there, done that. And we did a lot of stuff. We did the grocery store bandit thing. So they would arrest us on purpose so we could push the son and heir God thing. That didn't fly. So we went and took over cottage for a day. So we would get arrested. So because we wanted them to arrest us. We didn't want to volunteer in the court system. So we could push the envelope with the son and heir and, beneficiaries of God, and the trust, whatever you want to call that. So we learned a lot along the way, and a lot of different things we did, and we did stuff, and by far most of it was failure, but that's how we learn a lot of things, what not to do. And finally, at the end of the day, it comes down to they have jurisdiction over persons, period. Anybody can look in legislation, see for yourself. Okay, it's person, 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 person. So maybe you want to start with asking yourself, am I a man or am I a woman or am I a person? What am I? I got to make that distinction first. Okay, I'm a man. God made man. Okay, God rules over man. Okay, fair enough. So I'm man and I'm over here. There's this person. They keep talking about this person. What's the evidence of that person? Well, that's your birth certificate, your driver's license. If they're knocking on your door and they're making a claim, they're making a claim against the person.
So excuse. So you mentioned you directed me to a website called Tricks and Traps, something.
Darren, I just put the link in the chat.
YouTube channel is Reclaim Your Securities.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
And then you just click on the playlist button there, and then you'll see the Tricks, Traps, and Deceptions playlist.
Okay.
There's other.
Yeah, gotcha. That's your channel I picked up earlier. Thank you very much.
That particular playlist is dedicated to what we're talking about here tonight. Kind of keeps it narrow that way. Didn't get into Reclaim Your Securities so much. or into the receipts or any of that sort of stuff.
Thank you for sharing your brilliance. I just want to remind everyone here that's listening, this is really not about us doing anything right now. This is all about us learning. This is about us preparing for the future. And we have a long way to go because, again, our mind has been so conditioned to be in the matrix. And I think that a lot of people are getting impatient that we need to go and do something. And I get it. However, no, we're not meant to be doing right now. We're meant to be preparing ourselves and releasing the fear of the outer authority. So it's all about self-mastery, moving into mastering our emotions, mastering our mindset, connecting to God, creator, the God of your understanding, and just knowing that we have the power. We've always had the power. We've just forgotten. And Adam is here to remind us that we are the power. We hold it within ourselves. And what did you say? As long as we are doing the will of God, we are sovereign. Thank you so much for being here, Adam. We so appreciate you. And yes, I would love to have you come back. This was phase 1.
Really, that's why I would look at it. Yep. So I appreciate it. God bless. I love you guys, and I'm going to check out here and gotta
Thank
get
you
early.
so much.